He's hosted a dinner in the middle of an interstate. He wrote a manifesto called Kill the Restaurant. The New York Times has described Michael Hebb as a provocateur, and he's convened incredible conversations around the table with the likes of Jack White, Chelsea Clinton, and Ben Affleck. Now, this artist chef has built a table of truth and wants to talk about not so appetizing topics such as death. How does Michael Hebb tie powerful content to an equally powerful community to propel his A-list dinner parties? And how can he keep our attention when we all struggle not to look at our devices at the table? I'm Hanson Hossein. Welcome to Four Peaks. Well, Michael Hebb, chef, artist, welcome.
It's great to be here.
And I have to confess that we actually have a pre-existing relationship. We've worked closely together, and you've worked with our colleague Scott Macklin on some amazing projects. You're also a fellow in our communication leadership program. So it's not like we're here to promote you, but I think you're doing such interesting work that it bears further conversation. So thanks for joining us.
Absolutely, it's an honor.
So one of the reasons why we were drawn to you is that you actually, I think you place great premium on this notion of conversation and connection. And for you, that locus, that focus point is the table. Why the table?
Well, the table's always been a powerful place for telling stories. Since we began concentrating calories in cooking, since we were essentially that big divide between human and ape, a lot of people track it back to cooking and eating together, because we were able literally to make this great evolutionary exchange between big bellies and small brains to small bellies and big brains. By cooking, we concentrate, those calories, et cetera. So there's this long lineage to culture being shaped and shifted by people convening around the table. And then it continues on up through history. But I think it is a place where people are, at their most comfortable, sometimes at their most vulnerable, and definitely it's a place of authenticity and exchange of information and story. And it's relatively forgotten in these days.
And well, that's what intrigues me, because you have focused on the table as opposed to being a chef where we see so many other chefs focusing on the restaurant, the cookbooks, the brand. Why not do the restaurant, the cookbooks, and build that whole empire?
Well, yeah, I think we fetishize food, and it's been a great part of the evolution of American cooking, which in the last 20, 30 years has gone from pretty intolerable to this great local food movement and farm to table movement. But there's just not enough people thinking about how we eat those foods and what is compelling us to come around the table and share those foods, not just to watch Top Chef or buy this fancy new cookbook or go to a 4-star Michelin experience. But I really am passionate about the idea of access for everyone. How do we, in our families, bring people close together? How do we bring our friends together? Why do we cook, these foods that we now appreciate so much?
And as opposed to the restaurant, where it's almost like you're on a mini vacation where you have other people serving you, your notion and concept behind the table and the convening is that nobody's serving anybody. You're serving each other. There's no us and them situation and divide, right?
Yeah, that it's this expression of culture, of personal culture. When you bring someone into your home, you are bringing them into a very important part of your life. Like the hearth and the table and the kitchen are very intimate, and that sets the stage for the depth of engagement that can happen at the table. Going to eat at the French Laundry, there's a certain level of conversation that you're likely to get to. Whereas if you're in someone's home when people feel comfortable, there's a roaring fire, or it's near the holidays, there's just more that's available to people. And
you've spoken about how other chefs might fetishize cooking through their use of media, whether it's television or books. You've actually looked at media and technology also in a way to engage through those conversations, but very differently. You collaborated on building this, what you call the table of truth. Mm-hmm. So how do you actually bring technology? We're actually going to show some video of the table of truth that you helped build with Scott Macklin. What's the idea of being able to actually bring in media and content gathering into the conversation?
Yeah, well, my hope is the table's not going anywhere, and certainly it seems like digital media and technology is not going anywhere. And if the table is going to continue to shape culture and have an important place, in our society, then I've been interested in how you can merge those two things, as opposed to people just checking their iPhones, while they're at dinner. How can you create beautiful objects and rethink the table, like we've done with Olsen Kundig and with the MCDM department.
And without being distracted
Yeah.
by the cameras. Look at all the cameras you've got up there going. But people don't really notice that while they're having those conversations, it seems like.
Yeah, and what we're looking at is early a beta of what it means to merge technology in the table. So yeah, we have Kundig created a design where the cameras are somewhat obscured. Certainly there's no surprise to the guests. They know they're being filmed. But if they're not right in their face, or there's not a cameraman or a sound man stalking the table, they tend to immediately relapse into forgetting that they're there and being really open and sharing.
So speaking about being open and sharing, you have really delved deeply in these conversations lately around death. And that's the one conversation we really try to shy away from at the table. How do you broach that subject?
Well, I think there's a cultural myth in America that people don't want to talk about our end of life or death. And I don't think that's the case. It's what we all have in common. And it's not really a terrifying topic. It's a matter-of-fact thing. How we want to end our lives, who we want around us, how we want to support those people closest to us as they decline in health is something that we all have a vested interest in. And I've found, as opposed to people feeling that that's morbid or wanting to avoid it, if you engage them in a very thoughtful way at the table, and beautiful food, thoughtful questions, that they are ready for that conversation.
So has it worked?
Yeah, I think it works brilliantly. We've had dozens of dinners at this point, and each one has included laughter, tears, some anger, some great revelation, and a lot of gratitude.
So it becomes a conversation about life and not about death.
I think it's much more of a project about life, for sure. But let's have dinner and talk about life doesn't quite have the tooth.
It gets people's attention, no doubt about it, when you're talking about death.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think that's something we definitely want to explore more when we come back and see exactly how you do engage around the table and how we can learn about that as well. So when we return with Michael Hebb, we'll explore how he keeps the conversation going in the digital age. We're back with Michael Hebb from deathoverdinner.org. But did I say that right?
You got it.
Deathoverdinner.org. It's quite a ponderous thing as a website, to think about going there to talk about death.
Yeah, but it's a very welcoming website.
Yeah. And when I think about your career arc, if there is one, you strike me, obviously, as we talked about, you could have gone the other way. You could have been this rock star chef who has this amazing restaurant empire. Something tells me that you're more of an artist than a chef sometimes. Just the way, some of the things that you do, that you would have been very comfortable in 1920s France with all those great, in the Dadaist movement, this whole nihilistic, very philosophical world where art and the real world collide very strongly.
I'm going to agree with you.
Are you a man out of your time, you think?
No, I mean, I think more like an artist in the sense that I like to respond to the cultural context. Yeah. So I think that a restaurant responds to a very specific context. It's providing a service. And that just became not as interesting to me. I think that we live in fascinating times. I wouldn't change the time that we live in right now because there's so many things to delve into and there's so many things that people aren't discussing or considering. So I think it's an exceptional time to be doing the work I'm doing. Plus people care about food. Yeah. And so it's kind of a watershed moment, I think, to expand that terrain.
When you left Portland for Seattle, you got a lot of media coverage, and it struck me as that you were actually following your heart, despite the fact that you were leaving certain things behind at the same time. How do you deal with that when you're asked about why the move from Portland to Seattle and that transition? Yeah,
I mean, I think that Portland and Seattle are just very distinct places. They offer different things. Portland is great for community. It has vibrant, extraordinary, connected community. Seattle is connected globally. The larger concerns that affect all of us and affect developing countries play out here in a much more powerful way. People are doing critical work, and that that interests me more, the international connection and the level of work that's being produced in the city is just, it's of a different ilk than in Portland.
And yet you're able to create this incredibly influential and powerful global network of the people that you actually work and collaborate with around the world. You're able to do it from here. Has it ever been an impediment in terms of being based in this corner of the world when you are dealing with people like the Clintons and all these incredible inventors around the world?
Well, people are fascinated by the Northwest. So it's sometimes good to be, the kid from out of town, right? You're somewhat exotic. So I love living in Seattle. It's a great place to come home to. And again, extraordinary people here at the highest level of their game.
If you were to give us a little bit of your secret sauce in terms of how you've actually been able to make these connections, because this is one of the things that we find most valuable about our relationship with you, is that your network is just so darn amazing. How do you have those conversations? How do you get them to want to do things with you?
Well, generally someone will stumble into one of these dinners and decide that they want to do something with me because they had a powerful experience, I think is the way that it's usually gone. But when you feed somebody and you engage them in really important conversation and they have a meaningful experience, then a relationship is built.
What's a good example? Like, say, Ben Affleck. How did you come into a relationship with him? Was it over the table?
Yeah, it was with working in connection with the Eastern Congo Initiative, and to see what could happen when you convene thinkers and funders around these issues, not in your typical setting, not in a gala, not at a press conference, not in a business meeting, but through sharing culture and ideas while eating and drinking together.
And does it always have to be A-list? Because I suspect you have a real diverse group of people in your network.
Well, the goal is to empower as many people as possible to reconsider how we come together, how we eat, and how we think together. So I feel like I'm putting little ships, little models out into the world. Some of those ships are yachts, certainly, but I think that the important thing here is modeling for people and saying the table is a forgotten opportunity anytime, and I don't care if you're having a burger, at McDonald's. Like, use that time and space. It's time to reflect. It's a time to connect. It's a time to tell stories.
And what I like most about how you've used your network is that you actually do connect others to it. So people like Deborah Music from Theo's now has a relationship with Ben Affleck in terms of what they're doing with their chocolate from that part of the world. So it is a wonderful. You're Malcolm Gladwell's best kind of version of the Maven when you're looking at the tipping point. So we'll talk about more of this when we get back with Michael Hebb. After the break, we'll help extend his reach. We'll be right back. We're back with Michael Hebb, celebrated chef and celebrated artist, frankly. So you're doing all these great things, and I'm curious, like, how on earth do you make a living from this? Because it strikes me that you're almost like this freelance table setting, conversation setting guy, gun for hire kind of thing. But you've managed to make it sustainable at the same time.
Yeah, a lot of organizations that I work with think that this is a very important thing to add into the work that they do. So I work with leading NGOs, organizations like Summit Series, Clinton Global Initiative, and MasterCard Foundation, et cetera, and they realize that how their ideas are moved through the world can be influenced by how they convene people around those ideas. So bringing leaders together to have a really important discussion in the context of one of these dinners has proven to be really effective. So those are my patrons.
And how do you convince them to actually put their devices away? Because I'm sure these are very important people who are probably getting emailed and texted all the time.
Well, hopefully you are creating a compelling enough experience that they're not seduced by their technology. In some cases, we do check media, devices at the door.
So it sounds like you have engagement, conversation, connections, all buttoned up. What challenges are you facing right now?
Well, it's a matter of scale. So like you suggested earlier, there are these rarefied groups that I get to convene. The question now is, how do we get America to stop, set a table, gather the people closest to them, and have a very important conversation? And that's what Let's Have Dinner and Talk About Death is about, which I'll be speaking at TED Med to give a sneak preview of this digital platform that will do just that. Invite everybody in the country to stop and take the time to have this conversation and convene around the table.
You'll provide some kind of online guide, talking points, how they can actually set the table, the kind of people who should be at the table as well, and to encourage them to do that?
Yeah, it's kind of a cradle to grave guide that says, so hey, you want to have this dinner. Who is going to be at the table? Your grandparents, best friends, strangers. What should you read beforehand? What should you watch so that people have a shared experience? And then how should you host people? What are the conversational prompts? And then how do we lead people into advanced directives and living wills and petitions to Congress, things that can actually substantively change the metrics around end-of-life care.
So your challenge is basically get the average American to engage with this, essentially.
Yeah, to know about it, put it out there so we get the rubberneck effect of like, you survived a death dinner? What is that? How do I get to this? Like, what are my friends doing on social media? But then, yeah, to take the time and to put themselves in that vulnerable place to host a dinner like this.
It strikes me it's the most important conversation that we don't really want to have, but we know we have to have it.
Yeah, the statistics surrounding end-of-life care are staggering.
Yeah.
The one that rings most true with me is 75% of Americans want to die at home and only 25% of them do. So essentially half of America is not getting what they want, what they're entitled to, and they're paying a tremendous amount of money for it. The whole system is.
So I know for a fact that our students have actually worked with you on the conversation around death around the table, and you've posted this to Facebook, and I have a number of friends who have had really close ones die recently who've expressed that, wow, I wish I could have been part of that conversation. Because death is so pervasive in all of our lives that it strikes me that you actually have a really natural opportunity to actually showcase some of the work you've already done, find a way to include that on your website or put it out there through your social media channels and say, we've had this powerful conversation about death. Here was the return on investment that we had in having those conversations. And here's how you can actually do that yourself. I think if you can actually reach people that way, they recognize the value of it immediately and can engage in that. Have you thought about ways to get that out that way?
Well, we have a Kickstarter campaign that launches any day now. And my hope is via venues like TEDMed and the launch of the site midsummer, with the type of partners and advisors, we literally have an all-star cast of people from the medical and wellness and even from Hollywood that are coming together to support this project and to have it reach as many people as possible.
Well, it sounds to me like a classic recipe where you've got an amazing narrative, you have influencers, and you have social media channels, and it sounds to me that you'll be able to get people to engage in that if you use that in a strategic way. So it's something we can definitely talk about offline as well. We'll be right back as Michael Hebb teaches me how to throw the right kind of dinner party.
Four Peaks is made possible by generous support from Weber Shandwick.
So Michael Hebb's been talking to us all about the art of conversation at the table. Now he's brought me to the table to teach me how to throw a provocative, invocative dinner party. To the table.
To the table.
Michael.
Exactly. Well, I noticed in some of these how-to segments that you've been learning how to cook.
Yeah.
So I figured the next step is throwing a dinner party, inviting people in. And so I figured we would cover how to create a dinner party that people are going to remember for years. How do you create a historic feast? The first thing is the invitation. A provocation is really important, I think, because you do want to wake people up. People's senses are kind of dulled by the amount of information they get.
Yeah.
Same way with the cooking. You want the cooking to be evocative. You want the provocation to be evocative.
So what did you serve with razor blades, or are these X-Acto
blades?
blades?
So this invitation, as you pulled it out of the envelope, the first thing you saw was a razor blade. And this was is held in Washington, D.C. as well with a bunch of leaders. And this is the Declaration of Independence reprint in Helvetica. And with the idea of, like, it's been 200 years, what happens if we cut this document apart? So again, it kind of like, response.
Seeking a sacred cow.
Yeah, exactly.
They're not going to forget that.
Exactly, and we did. We had people rewriting the Declaration on their BlackBerries. All kinds of things have happened. Things that are really important are setting the mood to make people feel comfortable so that they can speak openly. Overlit rooms don't work. Yeah. Background music as people come in, essential. Feeling like there's a little bit of chaos is exciting. It kind of brings people together. Participation and family-style dining will create a sense of kind of ownership, like they're having an
Participation.
experience.
So they should be serving themselves or serving each other at the same time, right?
Yeah, exactly. If you have a caterer who's come in and has done, architectural high-rise dishes or some sort of molecular gastronomy, and it's all happening behind the scenes, I think the opportunity for deep engagement is lessened. And the closer the table can be to the kitchen, the better. Well, I think many of these dinners are symbolic. They're meant to reinvigorate the culture of dining. So even if you're having a simple dinner party among friends, you can pull from these little, from these symbolic dinners and rethink and reinvigorate how you would do that in your own home, because we've lost that culture. We've lost how to eat together in really passionate ways.
What about breakfast, lunch, or 11sies?
We'll put dinners in quotes.
Okay, yeah, because we can do this any time of day, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's an open canvas.
So if we had to give the list to anybody who wants to emulate a Michael Hebb dinner, we're talking about invitation, provocation, conversation, and capturing it all, right?
I think you got it.
All right, well, I think I can do it too. I don't think I can cook as well as Michael, but back to the studio. Thank you, Michael.
Absolutely.
Well, Michael Hebb, I feel eminently qualified maybe to perhaps host my own dinner party now.
Absolutely.
Thanks for showing me the ropes. If I made shepherd's pie and invited some influential people in my life, like my kids and my wife, would you come over for dinner?
Absolutely.
Okay, you won't criticize the cooking at all, will you?
Never.
Okay, great. Well, we invite you all to extend your reach by connecting with us at fourpeaks.org. Thank you, Michael Hebb. I'm Hanson Hossein.
Production of Four Peaks would not be possible without the generous support of our sponsors.